Hang on. Got it. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Turf Talk Down Under. I'm Angie, as you know, and I'm here with my partner in crime, Louise. How are you, Louise?
I'm fantastic. Thanks, Ange. Hi, everybody.
Yeah, it's been a while. We've actually tried to do this a couple of times, but we've had a few technical difficulties, and in another piece, the sound didn't work properly, and then I almost defamed someone, so I was probably thought it was better not to put that video up. But yeah, it's been a wild few months. You know, Let Women Speak seems so long ago, but it was such a pivotal moment, and so much has happened since then. I've been looking back at early interviews I did after the event, and it's almost like I was in shock that I didn't realise the consequences of what would happen, like both for me personally and for our movement, which I think has grown like dramatically. And I also think that we're kind of at a turning point with this ideology where people are waking up and they want to know what's going on. So we kind of have to mobilise and kind of become educators almost. We have to, because we can't make it into the mainstream news, we have to become the mainstream news. What do you reckon?
Oh, definitely. I've noticed that still people don't know because they're not hearing anything that questions what's going on. They're just fed, they're being fed, as we know recently on the ABC with their program. They're only being fed the positive for trans ideology, or they're being manipulated with shock horror, terrible, awful outcomes for children that aren't affirmed. So it's so difficult, I think, for the public to actually to be educated unless they've got a motivation to do that.
Yeah,
because and we've just kind of found ourselves in a situation where when we go out, that we are talking to people, and 99% of people are absolutely on our side, or they don't know what's happening, and we get the opportunity to let them know.
Yeah, I don't know anyone who is on board with minors having surgery, and I'm talking trans identified people. I don't know anyone. They don't believe it's happening, and they think it's happening in such a rare occurrence, but it's not true. No. They also, most people think puberty blockers are reversible because that's what the ABC keeps saying. It's temporary, it's reversible. They're being misled and lied to, and their opinions are based on that. And when they're confronted with the truth, they find it shocking. They think, well, how come, who do I believe? Random turf on Twitter, or do I believe the ABC? And that sort of stresses them out so much, they just put their hands up and go, I can't deal with this anymore. And they just run and hide, or they become abusive, or they just block it out. Yeah. So, particularly people on the left, I think they've been hiding from reality for so long. And I think the misogyny behind the movement has become so overt. And the obviousness that women and Nazis, women advocating for their sex-based rights and Nazis have zero in common is obvious to anyone except an extremist, So I think what happened to Moira Deeming, regardless of your position on her personal politics, was really shocking for a lot of women.
Oh, very much.
Really shocking.
And also men who are aware of the situation.
Yeah.
One of my, because I nick out here in Ballarat, from time to time with a sign, of course, and a fellow, he stopped his car and he came up to me and said, so what are you doing? And I told him what I was doing, and my sign's, it's a big sign that says, men will never be women. And then he asked me about Moira, and he was very interested. So he stopped his car, he got out, came up to me, and we had a really big, a great chat. Of course, as he was walking up to me, because he was quite a big fellow and I'm not overly large, I thought, and he was aware. Now, okay, it was only one person, But that gives me hope that there are people connected to what's going on. You know, I don't know. Maybe he was aware all on his own. Maybe his wife let him know. I don't know. Some people, yes, are very aware, but no one's allowed to talk about it.
Yeah, I think people don't become aware until it affects them personally. Now, in my case, I know about this issue because I've been affected personally on a number of levels, both with a family member transitioning, a person I knew growing up. You know, I know a fair bit about the process of transition from my loved ones, but I also have kids on the autism spectrum who are, you know, have potential to be groomed into this ideology. You know, I know the vulnerable young people. Like, there's a lot of things where it impacts my daily life. And I also have been involved in women's crisis services that have been invaded by either autogynephilic men or non-binary individuals trying to build a gateway for autogynephilic men. And also our services have been impacted funding-wise because we have to tick a little box that says you must admit men to your service or you'll lose your funding. And in the byline of the box, it is, you will lose your funding even if you've spent it. So, you know, it's affected me on multiple levels. And this is what I find. I think it doesn't, you know, people are like, oh, just be kind, let's be nice, whatever. But when someone that they work with, a middle-aged man that they work with, suddenly turns up today dressed like, you know, they're in pornography and insists on using the women's bathroom, that's when they begin to care. And, of course, they don't know what to do with it because, you know, because they're told to be nice. They're conditioned, particularly in the workplace. There's this insinuation that if you say anything, you'll lose your job. So,
very much so. But also in the workplace, people are having education sessions on how to be inclusive because, you know, Joe's, you know, decided to become Joanna. No, I was just going to say, talking about the clothes, I just think that they've also trawled the op shops.
I see them in the op shops all the time.
I know, a few months back here in Ballarat, I can remember I was behind this bloke, like, clearly a bloke, and he was, I don't know, I'm going to go 60, and he had a pink dress on, like a short pink dress. The long hair could have been his, I don't know. It was, or else it was a really vile-looking wig. And he had the little, you know, the little shoulder bag, and he was creeping along on shoes, but he had the old bloke legs.
Yeah,
you know, you could tell that from a mile away. And I just said, "Oh, you creepy, creepy." You know, in full view in the street. Now we're supposed to say that that's okay. Yeah, okay, maybe it is okay for him to do that. But I'm sure as hell not going to call him she, and nor would anybody else in their right mind do that. Obviously a bloke dressed up.
Well, you realise that the executive producer of that little piece on the ABC on Monday night was, you know, Pat, who is employed by the ABC and hired out to workplaces to actually, you know, sweetly impose the ACON AWEI agenda. Like, she actually actively promotes gender inclusion and diversity in workplaces, and yet that's who the ABC chose to produce an episode of Four Corners, which is supposedly our flagship current affairs show, that was completely biased towards the ACON agenda, with a couple of little token quotes from two gender critical people. Like, it was a dog's breakfast, and I can't believe that they can get away with it. Well, I can believe anything now, you know, from, you know, like, if they're willing to get on television and tell us that a man is a woman because he says so, they will publish anything at all. So no, I'm not actually surprised. I'm just disgusted. I'm just absolutely disgusted.
The fact that we just get shut down at every turn, every single turn. There's an organisation here in Ballarat called Tiny Pride, and they, but I mean, that kind of conjures up stuff, doesn't it? Because it did for me. And I didn't know anything about it, but apparently they go around businesses and help them be inclusive, you know, and
is our mate in sarcasm, is he involved in Tiny Pride?
I don't know if he is, but a very close she's a woman, butch lesbian, runs it, and
okay.
you know, and she's absolutely on board with pushing all this garbage. And you know, whenever she sort of encounters me, you know, I'm just an evil nutbag, basically.
See, that's one of the tragedies of this. You know, you'd think that two lesbians would be on the same team. You know, the division it's put through women generally, plus the compounding division it's put through, you know, the lesbian community, you know, and then we get, you know, the race, you know, the various intersections that intersect with women that have been absolutely decimated by this ideology. It just makes me sick. One of the other things that motivated me to do this episode today is I got a message from one of my gay male friends who's, you know, around my age, mid-50s, and, you know, he just messaged me to offer his support and say that him and all the other gay men just stay home now because their movement's been appropriated by trans people. And, you know, every time I hear this, you know, guys who survived the AIDS crisis no longer welcome in their own community, you know, and an AIDS charity is leading this push. It is just insane. And the way that, you know, and we also spoke briefly about how they're medicalising gender non-conforming kids and how just disgustingly homophobic that is, you know.
I believe that people who still, if a child, you know, at 10 sees this really great tattoo, you know, Mom, Dad, can I please? You know, I really, really, really want it, you know, and I'll want it when I'm 20, and I'll want it when I'm 50. I'll never regret it.
Yeah.
Oh, of course, darling. Of course we'll go and get you a tattoo. But they get hooked into this bloody puberty blocker cross-sex hormone train, and the love bombing and the acceptance and, you know, this is what you need, all directed at young kids who, for whatever reason, they're going through this stuff, especially with younger ones. Of course, they want to be a whatever it is that they want to be, but 2 weeks later, maybe not so much. And a year later, it'll change to something else. We all know that. But with teens, that is the time when anxiety is huge. Life is changing, and if you've started on this path of, you know, maybe your mate has decided they're trans, and you see how accepted they are and how loved they are, and you know, they might have you know, shitty parents that aren't affirming them, and you know, the families against them, and so kids relate to that, and boom, you know, you've got another kid who is kind of thinking, well, maybe I'm trans. How do they back? They can't back out. It's too. Yeah.
No. I just think I see gender dysphoria as a symptom of trauma.
Yes.
And I think as a society, children have been traumatized by the internet, both in the sense of being exposed to adult concepts like pornography, and also in the sense that the social peer pressure that they experience at school, there is no escape from it, from the bullying, from the objectification, from all the awful things about being a teenager. They now follow you home into your bedroom, and in some places, because there's no teachers or parents to moderate it, it's worse in your own home. And I think we're dealing with a culture of traumatized children. And the pandemic and the way that media is polarizing people feeds into that. They feed into a culture of fear. And then you add into that you know, university education for poor and working class people is almost impossible. So we're looking at lower paid jobs with less pay. Houses are more expensive. Living costs are high. Like, you know, the picture that young people are getting, and also for women particularly, that we are supposedly equal with men despite the evidence, and that pornography is a career choice. You know, like, they're traumatized. They're deeply, deeply, deeply traumatized kids, and they don't know where to go. So they're going deeper and darker into the rabbit hole, which the internet provides. And the state comes along and goes, oh, these people are pliable. We can manipulate their minds and get them to do what we want, because we need our drones who are, you know, who are going to work to keep all our services afloat, while us on the gravy train sit back and sit in our deck chairs and enjoy our lives, you know. I mean, maybe that's a simplistic kind of sort of neo-Marxist look at things, but yeah, I think it's that simple.
The whole thing is an industry. And
yeah.
Looking at it right through, I can't believe that teachers are complicit in well, to start with, in keeping children who are socially transitioning at school, keeping their information separate from the parents and not including the parents.
But there's something in it for that. There's a promotion in it for that. You know, there's always some personal incentive for these activists, the activist teachers, the activist unionists. There's always something that they're getting back from that. Maybe even it is just to become a confidant of vulnerable kids. I don't know. There's always got to be some benefit. You know, it's sick.
I don't understand it with teachers because, you know, that's my background. And the thought that teachers would, willingly or unwillingly, I don't know, because we all know that if you stand up and speak out against this, you are very likely to lose your job.
Yep.
So there's huge incentive for people to not talk about it, and perhaps within their classrooms to minimise the impact. But at the end of the day, if children are not affirmed, and we know that children can be removed from their parents.
Yeah.
On earth, like where do parents go? If they go to a psychologist, psychologists are now forced to affirm. They're not allowed to do the watchful waiting, and so does that? What do the parents do when they're told the dead son or the live daughter story?
Yeah.
It's so manipulative and just so coercive, and often people with, like, they don't want to confront and say, no, I want more for my child. This isn't right. I do know that they're having difficulties. I do know what's in their background. This isn't the way. But the child is quite emboldened by the fact that there's all this information coming at them saying if you insist, they have to follow because they know about the consequences to their families. And at that age, they're not that invested in, well, if I push for this, then, that's going to really hurt mum and dad. And not that should be their main concern at that age, but it generally isn't a concern for kids, for teens. They're more about themselves, which is what they're supposed to be as they're going through teenage years. That's when you do the rebellion but gee whiz, this is a really sick rebellion.
Yeah, and I find, it's mostly neurodiverse kids that get involved in this from all social and socioeconomic backgrounds. But, my experience being, having family members who are neurodiverse is that when you have a child who's struggling to adjust to high school and acting out, there's no support, there's very little support, and that child might be socially ostracised or whatever. And, you know, then there's the complex problems that come with that.
Yep.
But if you declare that your child is transgender, you're offered a wealth of support services which affirm this delusion. Your child is emboldened and encouraged to be self-determining rather than a burden on the school and the parents. You know, I've had it suggested that I put my children on Ritalin.
Oh.
Now, that they're happy to suggest that, but they would, you know, but they would if a child presented with gender stuff, they'll also suggest to put them on hormones. You know what I mean? It's just, it's frightening. It's really frightening. But I can understand from a parent's perspective why, if they were misled, that they may choose to go down that path. And I think once you've committed your child to lifelong medical harm, I think it's a difficult place to come back from.
I agree.
And that's why they double down and they get the violins out. And that's why we saw that disgusting weaponising of suicide on Four Corners the other night, because these parents have to believe they're doing the right thing. Otherwise, they will be tormented for the rest of their lives.
Of course they will.
Well, you know, and justifiably, I think. Can't understand, as a mother, I can't understand how anyone could put their child on such a severe medical pathway for no physical reason. To put your child through, breast removal surgery on 15-year-olds is just horrendous. Yeah. And then don't even get me started on these 16-year-old kids in the US and probably here, let's not lie to ourselves, probably here, who are having their genitals inverted, you know? Yeah. Like, I can't understand how anyone, I can't even understand how anyone could allow their child to go on hormones after having been on the pill for years, and also, having HRT through menopause, and knowing the devastating effect that has on your body when you've got hormonal imbalances and you've got to weigh up the cost and the benefit. And as an adult, that is a really difficult thing to do and can have quite catastrophic consequences on both your physical body and your mental health. And we do that as adults, and it's hard. To do that to your children is despicable. It's absolutely despicable.
What I can see is you've got a parent and the vulnerable child next, and then you've got this whole raft of apparently like professionals, all adults, feeding down to the parent that this is the path that will benefit that child. How does a parent cope in a situation like that when they don't have resources? Because no one will tell them, no one's going to point them in a different direction, because it's like, here comes another kid that we can feed through, because you've got doctors who are prepared to medicalise these kids. I don't know how they sleep at night. But then you've got surgeons who are prepared to actually put knives into healthy bodies.
Hopefully they're not going to be insured anymore.
Boy, I hope they're not. I just think, how dare you? You really, if there was a public square and they have the hanging noose, I mean, really, that is like, or what's that other thing where they used to put people in
the guillotine?
No, not the guillotine. Where they put their heads in and people chucked stuff at them.
Oh, yeah,
like, rotten tomatoes and things.
Yeah.
Because they should be shamed. They should be.
Yeah.
How dare they do that? And, of course, you've got a child and family who have to be grateful, because what else have they got at that stage?
The youth mental health service is completely useless, and they put all the money into the gender side of things because it gives them space. Like, I think governments like Victorian Labor, they don't give a crap what happens in 10, 15 years, because Dan will be long gone. It puts a Band-Aid on a gaping wound to affirm a child's gender. It gives them a temporary honeymoon period
Yeah.
before the sharp decline. The girl that I know who had her breast removed at 15 is now 18, and she's been on testosterone for a year and a half or so, and she actually looks great. She looks like a slightly effeminate boy. She still has all her hair. She hasn't broken out in the inevitable acne and pockmarked skin that long-term trans-identifying girls get. She's lost weight because her fat's turned to muscle. She's in this honeymoon period, and she's also in that wonderful, time in your life where you're very self-involved and you want to look good. And I'm watching this, and having known people who've gone through the entire process and are transitioned 20 years later, my fucking heart is breaking, because I'm looking at this child and I know what is coming for her. It's a walking stick before she's 30. It's having her uterus removed and all of the hormonal complications that come with that, and the high risks of certain cancers and all sorts of things that happen when you take a healthy girl's hormones away, and I can see it all just waiting around the corner for her. Like
the testosterone. They're not. That is a poison in a female body.
It is. Yeah, it's just horrifying, but we've been pretty doom and gloomy so far, but we've had a lot of laughs in the last few weeks, particularly this week. We're just, I don't know, since Let Women Speak, as everyone knows, there's been a lot of threats of violence, and any potential events that we hold in Melbourne are likely to, mean that we are counter-protested by hundreds, if not thousands, of trans rights activists, because the two most powerful men in the state have managed to convince a whole bunch of uni students and their allies that women's rights activists are Nazis. So why wouldn't they come and protest us?
Oh,
and it gives men an excuse to scream and yell at women, basically. So, we're very reluctant in this climate. And also the police have said the few times that we've tried to organise an event, and other people have tried to organise events, that the police will not support us. They will not come and make sure we don't get bashed. So how can we do it? So what we've been doing is we've been organising in small groups, and we've been taking our signs and our banners and our stickers and whatever we have, and we've been doing street actions. And this is the main reason that I wanted to talk to Louise, because I remember a couple of years ago, Louise put some signs up in her car and drove around to the local women's prison with signs telling them to get men out of women's prisons. And it was a one-woman event, and it was so successful, it went all over the world.
No, there was two. Kate was with
two. Kate was with you. Sorry, Kate, if you're watching, which I know you will be. But the perception was that even a single person, on their own, does what Kelly J reckons, be the billboard, that one person or two people can have a huge impact. Now, the other day, Louise and myself and Juanita wanted something to do because we're a bit bored and restless, and we went down to Daniel Andrews' office and held up our signs and took some photos. And we also held up some banners on the busy Princess Highway down outside his office. And as Louise said about her little actions in Ballarat, we got a really, really good response. We had people drive off the road, come into the service lane to come and talk to us. And I too admit, the first one I saw, I thought, oh shit, they're going to bash us. And everyone who came up to us was lovely and really supportive and outraged at what's been going on. Every person who went into or out of his office supported us. And the toots we got on the highway were just amazing, like toots and yeah, go girls and all this sort of stuff. And it was a successful event in that. And I popped it on Twitter because I know women around the world are looking for something to do. They're saying, well, I feel restless about this issue. I don't know what I can do in my personal capacity. What can I do? So I pop it on Twitter and say, look, you can do this. It's just the three of us. We went down to Dan Andrews' office. And then, of course, 5,000 or whatever people shared it and liked it and whatever. Then the Daily Mail picked it up and it went to tens of thousands of people. That tiny little action. Yeah, that tiny little action that three everyday women with their homemade signs went all over the world.
And also what it's doing, by us doing that and by other women, or it doesn't have to be just women, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
other women getting out in 2s and 3s and make your own sign. That's what I've been doing. Make your own sign. And stand somewhere. Make sure you're safe, of course.
Yeah.
There are a woman in there's a woman in Ireland sent me some information, a woman in New Zealand, and she said that we had inspired her. And
you inspire me.
And I just think, go like just doing what we've been doing, and a couple of people have said, are you safe? And I think personally, I feel as safe as I can feel, but I refuse to feel unsafe.
Yes.
I'm aware of my surroundings, but should anyone have the, actually dare to come up to me and threaten me, I'm always in a public space. There will be eyes on them. So if anyone dares to be a total asshole and try and threaten me or threaten us when we're together, they'll be known about. It won't be a private thing. It won't be something to do and get away with, as we have seen happen in Melbourne just recently with women that we know, who went to the courts, and the fellow that bashed her has basically just gotten away with a slap on the wrist.
Crying trans. Oh, I'm trans. That's why I did it all. She hurt my feelings. Boo-hoo.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yes, misgendered me. Well, I just think everyone should be bloody misgendering. I'm not going to call a bloke she or her, for God's sake. I'm
Especially a violent bloke.
Oh, sure as hell not going to do the they, them crap. No. Come on, grow up. It's ridiculous. Everyone knows it's ridiculous.
Yep.
Stop playing.
I must admit, I rarely go to the city since our event, because I've been told that if I show my face in the city of Melbourne and I'm seen, that I'll be assaulted. So, that's what happens when powerful men imply that you're a Nazi. People feel justified to threaten. And, although I think stuff you, because we haven't got, the police won't support women in groups, I'm reluctant to announce that I'm going to be at a particular space, because I know, and I've looked into the eyes of these men, I know they mean it, that they will assault me if they're given the opportunity. And they won't care if they're charged, because they know they'll get away with it, because a precedent has been set in Melbourne where men can commit violence, not just trans-identifying men, but men can commit violence and there's no consequences. Or if they have a transgender identity, then the violence that they commit will be minimised as a consequence of their torment, and a DAVO occurs where the perpetrator will be portrayed as a victim, as it does every time they say something about us and call it anti-trans instead of pro-women. It's this reversal of victim and perpetrator that justifies the violence that they commit against us as women, as if a middle-aged autogynephile isn't, there's few things that suggest someone is more powerful than them going to women and saying, I'm now a woman and you will admit me to your toilet.
Oh, yeah. Yep, absolutely. Well, I remember back when it stuck with me that bloke who was in charge of a domestic violence. I think it was in the UK.
Yeah.
And said for women to reframe their trauma.
Yeah.
Like that's what. So women who fought and fought and fought to set up these organisations to protect women from men now have to not be frightened of men. And I just can still, it still blows me away that that's the position that we're in. And to be anti-trans, I don't give a fuck anymore. If you can't see what we're trying to to say, then you're an absolute dickhead. Really?
Because we supposedly have, there's supposedly 1% of the population, which is a load of crap, but they have made such a loud noise that they now have specific trans services.
Yes.
They have LGBTQIA plus services. They have men's services, but they still want to go in women's services.
Yep.
So to avoid men, women have 0 choices, and trans identifying males have 4 choices here in Melbourne. It's despicable. And it's domestic violence awareness raisers who earn money from speaker events like Jess Hill and Jane Caro and other advocates like that who are perpetuating this horror of putting men, predatory men, because only predatory men want to be in women-only spaces, putting them in our services. And the state's fallen behind it. But what I've found here in my local area, and I'm lucky, in case Sean Mulcahy is listening, I live in an area where multiple local councils converge, right? And I speak to local council representatives. They're not aware that if Dan Andrews tells them to do something, they don't have to do it. And when they are made aware, saying, you realise that this means that we have to admit men, they sort of go, what?
Yeah.
And they will help you work around that. Same goes with you must fly the trans flag. You must remove all of your female toilets and replace them with unisex. There's no evidence that the rules have changed, and the Andrews Labor government is acting as if they have on behalf of lobbyists, because it's financially beneficial for them to, when they replace 6 toilets, to replace them with 3.
Yeah.
So, we have to become more cunning in understanding what the law actually says and holding them to account for inflicting things on us which make us unsafe.
Yeah.
And so I think those personal conversations, we have to basically mirror what they did to get where they are, which is to start with one activist, to having a conversation with one local government representative or one state government representative or whatever, and just get in there. Because when people become aware, it becomes personal, and they're like, what? And I've really found some really positive exchanges can occur. However, you have to be sure that your local representative doesn't find out beforehand that you're gender critical, otherwise they won't meet with you, which is the experience that I've had. So,
and we've discovered that here with oh gosh, I can't even remember her surname, but one of the MPs here, state MP, can't remember her name. We met outside her office because she told Kate that to talk about this was just too upsetting for her. And you think, oh really?
Yeah.
Come on.
Tell that to the woman who was raped, who's gone to a crisis service, and there's a man sitting there. Tell that to the wrongly imprisoned Aboriginal woman who's thrown in jail, and there's a rapist in her cell. Tell them how difficult it is for you.
Yeah, and that woman is only there because of some unpaid fines.
Yes, that's right.
That's been made her into a criminal.
Yeah. It doesn't even take that now. We've got this hate speech legislation coming in where we'll all be crims. It'll be really interesting.
I'll be fascinated to watch how that plays out.
Yeah. So I think, the few things have really encouraged me lately. One is the Tickle versus Giggle case going ahead. And, Sal Grover now needs to raise a fortune in order to, be best represented. So if anyone can support her fundraiser, that'd be great. But I'm also really heartened by Moira Deeming and, how it would have been so much easier for her to just toe the party line and let it go and ignore all of the women who are harmed by Let Women Speak. But she has so much integrity as a person that she is taking John Pesutto to the federal court at considerable cost and making him accountable for defaming us. Like, I'm so heartened by that. And that a woman from a relatively, like, she's an old leftist, but, you know, she's sort of swung more conservative as an adult. And, you know, that she would not leave behind women like me who in the past have been politically opposed to her, you know, really tells me a lot about her character, and that she is the sort of person that we need, because, you know, she puts women first. Yeah. She really does, you know, and like, yeah, I'm just so immensely impressed with her, and, you know, her never leaving us behind. I mean, you've been harmed by being associated with Let Women Speak. You had the federal police investigate you for assaulting Lydia Thorpe when you didn't lay a finger on her.
Apparently I was investigated.
Yeah.
And there's Sean likes to bring that up all the time about how violent I am. When it's pretty obvious I wasn't violent, but no, he never misses a chance.
Yeah, and I'm a school shooter, because I wrote because I used to work as a country town newspaper journalist, and I wrote a response to an editorial in the Age about school shootings, talking about adolescent mental health, and Amy Sargent published one half of that letter that made me sound like I was condoning violence as a 14-year-old, and I was speaking as of myself at 14 and how messed up I was. And then the second half of the letter was how, as an adult, I can see things clearly, right? But they left that whole second part off, and they published to their minions that I'm a school shooter. So yeah, they like to remind me of that one, and they get away with this stuff because of this narrative led by, you know, Andrews, Pseudo, and the mainstream media, that TERFs, you know, are just the worst possible people ever, and everything they do is evil, because they can't for 1 second recognise the fact that I have, you know, that people like us with left-wing views who advocate for whoever we can and try and bring them to the table, they can't reconcile themselves that we have everything in common with them except for this misogyny that is gender identity and the exploitation of kids. You know, they just can't. They've got to paint us as the most different people, the most horrific, horrible goblins that ever walked the earth, because we are right there behind them. You know, we're there going, excuse me, we are your conscience speaking.
Yeah. But also, what is very, very clear, especially from our point of view, is that when we talk about being pro-women, we mean all women, all women from across the political divide, from anyone born female is who we're talking about. So, and it doesn't matter. What we're talking about are our rights as females, and that's any female, wherever, any female at all. Yeah. So to then bring in all this other stuff that for some reason is needed to what's the word when you want to break someone down? To make it sound disingenuous. You know, well, what about this, and what about this issue, and what about that issue? People can be passionate about a lot of issues, even at the same time, which is, you know, it's amazing how multi-skilled people can be. Yeah. But also, we don't have to give opinions on a whole range of issues.
No.
It doesn't negate this issue, and this issue is about these bloody men who have convinced governments to make people say that they're women, and to point out that kids are kids. Leave them alone. They're not your property to be experimented on, and that's exactly what they're doing.
I find this whole dehumanisation process really interesting, because this is a deliberate act, right? The media never approached me about what happened at Let Women Speak.
No.
Or Kelly J. The mainstream media has not interviewed Kelly J until now, where a journalist from The Australian interviewed her recently. But they didn't want that. It's like we have become the women who cannot be named. Yes. And I see article after article where it's about trans blah, blah, blah. And then I see a Twitter user and my words in inverted commas. A Twitter user said, a Twitter user or an anti-trans activist said, and there's my words.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I am because if they use my name, people go, who's this? And they go over there and they're Pete.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that could be anyone else's name too, but for some reason I keep seeing my own words there, but not attributed to me. Now, except for my favourite gay magazine out in Perth, who always reluctantly publishes my name when they steal my content. So hi, fellas. But there are like I'm seeing my words, and even with when a few of us went to Sydney and were invited to speak at Parliament House to some politicians, and some of the media was there.
Good to see that. And it was that went round the world too.
Yeah. And the thing about that was, they mentioned Kath Deves mostly, Kira Lee in a negative way, Sal Grover reluctantly. And then they completely didn't mention me because I'm from the left. And they don't want anyone from the left who says, I am from the left, listen to me. Yeah. They don't want to give us a platform at all. How many times would it be amazing for the media to talk to Nina Valens? Now, Nina has had opportunities to speak to the media, but, why aren't they getting her on television to talk about this issue?
Oh, of course.
There are left-wing women who are so knowledgeable and so concise and so well-spoken. Yeah. There are heaps of them. Bronwyn Winter, for example, there's heaps of Australian left-wing feminists who could be speaking about these issues, and none of us get a voice. Nobody. So what we have to do is we have to do what we've been doing, and we become the media. We go and we do these little stunts, or we make these comments on prominent people's profiles that we demand to be seen and heard. We become the billboard, we become our own media. Yep. And I think we also have to lose, I struggle with this, I have to lose that self-consciousness that I have about my words not being enough, thinking, who wants to hear from me? I'm just a single mom, or I'm just, like talking myself down. I think that's part of that conditioning that people have on the left, but I'm white and I'm privileged, and who am I to be talking about this? We have to put that away. To me, I think it's just so offensive when people go, look at you white women talking amongst yourselves. Why would people assume that women from all cultures communicate the same way white women do? Do they really think that Indigenous women aren't talking about the impact of men in thousands of years of Indigenous history? Do they honestly, are they that condescending and racist and fucking ignorant that they think that that's not happening? Yeah. And so they're saying, but you're a bunch of white women. Yeah, we are, because this is the platform that white women have. And, we will ask others to come onto our platform. But if they say no for whatever reason, why is that our fault? So they're trying so hard to silence us, to diminish what we're saying. And no matter who you are, you've got a voice. You might find a place. You might be more comfortable writing letters. You might want to go and do in-person stunts. You might want to do TikToks. You might, there's so many ways that you can contribute to this fight, and don't ever think that what you offer isn't enough. If three, women on the dark side of 50 can get a dodgy little homemade sign protest action to go worldwide, then your voice can be out there too. And your voice is as important as anyone. Absolutely.
Yep. Every voice is important.
Yeah. I'm just so proud of the women who have, have cracked it after Let Women Speak and just said, right, what can we do? Some of us are tired. I know I'm tired. What happened, the consequences of being defamed have had huge personal consequences on me that I won't talk about unless some of these matters come up in court. If Moira succeeds in taking John Pesutto to the federal court, if he doesn't, come to the party around defaming us, then it's likely that the women who were at the after meeting will have to appear in court, where it's possible that I will be interrogated by his barristers.
Yeah.
So that could be an interesting time. I'm a bit nervous about what they will, how they'll portray me in public. How they will weaponise things.
Well,
I've been thinking about that. But they like, these people are foolish if they think that they can demonise me and things can be any worse than it is to be called a Nazi. No, really. Like, to be made unsafe in your own city, to have my children's friends' parents say that their kids can't come to our house because of Let Women Speak. There's few things that can hurt me more than that. So, if people think that they're just going to push me down, I'm going to come back up like one of those, like a Jack in the Box. I'll just be like, ha, yeah.
I think they're, like a phoenix.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I'm a bit too old and tired for that. But I've been really enjoying taking it back to basics and doing like a little stunt. And because, that's when I first started. My first protest was in Brisbane. I was 18, nearly 19. Yeah. And we protested during the AIDS crisis against Joe Bjelke-Petersen's corrupt police, who were weaponising the hate towards people with HIV and doing things like planting drugs on men and threatening to charge them with homosexuality, which was still a crime. And we went out in as because I worked in a gay bar at the time. A gay bar, is that politically correct? But yeah, it was a gay bar. I worked in a gay bar at the time, so we all went out en masse and we protested, against the way that people were being treated. And what we've been doing lately, that grassroots stuff that we're sort of plotting over kitchen tables and meeting up with our mates and whatever, takes me back to that time and reminds me how successful that small scale direct action is. Anna McCormack is so good at this. If I could clone Anna and put her in every single city, she's so good at that. And she's also good at avoiding some of the conflict, because the optics of bashing a 70-year-old lady aren't even great for trans rights activists. So,
I figure that's what's going to keep me safe. That's not going to, if you're going to go around belting up an old lady, then it's good. Yeah.
I should let my hair grow out. Might give me a bit of
cut it all off. Then they'll begin.
Yeah, good. Wouldn't be the first time. Yeah. No, it's well, we've got a few things on the boil at the moment. A few little plots and schemes.
Yep.
Yeah. But I think I hope pardon?
You said I'm looking forward to our next one.
Yes. We're just going to keep popping up where you least expect us. And and I think what you and the other women are doing in Ballarat is absolutely amazing. You have inspired people all over the country, if not the world. And you're popping up on weekends, you're popping up during the week. Sometimes you've got 3 people, sometimes you've got 10, sometimes you've got more. I just think it's wonderful, and tens of thousands of people are seeing your work. So yeah, keep it up. It's great.
Well, look, I'm wrapped in the whole point of doing it, apart from trying to pique people in Ballarat and just to have chats, is to let people know that it's possible to do that. And yes, it's tricky if you're not innately confident or have built-in confidence, I suppose. One of our women, she finds it really anxiety but she turns up, and because she knows how important it is. Also, if you're with other women, they'll be supporting you because they know that together we're strong.
We are. On another positive note, I watched Kelly J. Keen's video the other day, and she says she's possibly coming back to Australia if they let her in, because then the police will have no choice but to protect us.
Yeah.
And isn't that pathetic and sad that Victorian women need someone to come in from overseas to make sure we're protected from Victorian men? That is Victorian in the true sense. It's like, it's crazy.
2023, and here we are.
Yeah, going backwards.
Well, absolutely. When I was bringing my boys up, it was all about smashing down the sex stereotypes, and it's just come back with another name.
Yep.
It has, and not only that, it's come back with the expectation that we forget everything that's real and insert men because of their feelings of being women to now, and even to have legislation that says men's feelings of being women mean that they can say they're women. Then everybody has to say they're women. What do you think these people are leading our country and our state? Dan Andrews, seeing that photo of him gazing up at that at the drag queen, who was all of 8 feet tall in his big shoes.
Yeah.
That was sickening. And that's around the drag story time.
Oh,
People, we've got to have the drag queens who historically, it's adult entertainment where they're cartooning women, with the over, what do you call it? Oh, I don't know. Loads
the caricature. Yeah.
Yep, that. And and the hair and the breasts and the bums and making fun of women, because that's what, it's just over sexualizing every part of a woman. And don't you tell me that false eyelashes and Botox and bum injections and boob jobs haven't come from somewhere.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
What about that thing we went to the other week? Because some left-wing trans rights activists had this online forum, and Louise and I went, right? Why not? And they were talking about how the Australian Services Union is actually promoting drag queen storytime in all of the libraries, because one activist union member in each library, and you've got a drag queen story hour, and people aren't going to argue with the union because they're protecting their workplace. So if you say to the union, you can't do what you want here, then workers are not going to do that, So, yeah, it was really interesting sitting in on their strategy meeting, basically, where they were blowing it all up each other's backsides, and 2 of the biggest turfs in Melbourne were sitting in there listening, and they didn't even know. So, but it was really, it was quite scary how they were talking about how the unions are driving this. Like, my dad was a unionist. He worked for the TTDU, and I can't imagine the average unionist bloke, because it is a blokey culture, supporting this. I just can't imagine it. But yet the unions have been instrumental in pushing this AWEI bullshit into workplaces, because there's kickbacks for them. There's obviously Labor and the unions are in bed together. They have been, they always will be. And there's some kickback somehow, apart from the obvious in that, stripping workers' rights away in some sick way feeds the need for unions, and union membership is dwindling. Apart from that, so it's been really interesting. It's just really, really interesting to look at their strategies and how simple their strategies are, but how effective, because it only takes one activist in each library. And Trades Hall is full of activists that are attempting to build political careers. And they see this as a methodology to put themselves, into public life. And it never works out, especially for women, because once women age out of disgusting old blokes being wanting to look at them, then their union career is over. But it's just awful to see the unions corrupted in that way, and for children to be the casualty. Like, they're targeting small children and indoctrinating them, you know, and then we go through, there's the childcare centres, you know. Andrews has also got to push for, well, we've sort of gone into this culture now where single mums and two-parent families, the woman can't afford to stay home anymore. So there's this real push to put your children in childcare when as soon as they turn 3. There's this push to divide families, to put the state's messages into children's heads as opposed to the family's messages, you know, and it's just this sick thing that is just feeding itself at the moment, and we really need to put our foot down.
I've got grandchildren in kindergarten. I've not been to the kinder, so I don't know personally, but my 8-year-old grandson already believes that girls can be boys and boys can be girls.
Well, I think kids would believe that, except that now you can they'll medicalise them. Yeah.
You know, that's what he's being taught. That's obviously part of the story time. I mean, how else would he be thinking like that? It certainly doesn't come from his home.
Yeah.
That, you know, and you just think, you know, and he's a beautiful, caring boy. So if he's going to be told, like any child, you need to be kind, well, if that's what's pushed, then of course that's what they're going to aim to do. It's just, it's insidious. And you know, call it a conspiracy theory if you like, because that's what they like to call us, as well as all the other negative crap that you know, we didn't do this. It's propaganda and it's indoctrination.
Yeah.
Tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, I'm about to freeze to death because I'm up the cold end of my house, so we better end it there. But no, thank you.
I've just part of my activist kit is a new pair of gloves that I bought online because here in Ballarat, if you're outside and you're holding a sign with your bare hands, they turn into ice blocks in 5 minutes. So I've now got a beautiful pair of gloves that are part of my kit. Sorry,
I'm going to remember that when I see you next week for our next little surprise stunt. I'm going to remember that. But I also want to give a shout out to my Patreon supporters because when I went to Sydney the other week, they paid for my budget flights and for my accommodation. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you to people who support me on Patreon. And I know you do, Louise, so thank you to you. And that little bit a month makes a huge difference to me and my kids because, you know, although like my turfing might look cheap, but it really isn't. You know, there's travel, that it takes up time. Like there's a whole bunch of things that people don't factor into when you become politically active, you know, and it's just, I just appreciate the support so much. I also appreciate views on this channel because I haven't put anything on it for 2 months, but if people would like to subscribe and share, that would be fantastic. That's another way that you can really help and it doesn't cost anything. And boost us a little bit because, you know, if we can, the more people who see this, the more people will normalise people talking about this stuff. And that's all we're trying to do, you know, that we prove people that we're not demons, we're just everyday people whose lives have been impacted by, you know, this horrific overreach of the state that's harming women and children. So, you know.
I wouldn't mind wearing some of my other clothes.
Oh, okay.
You know, I love my turfing tops, I really do, but I think I'm not doing the right thing if I, you know, pop on a different blouse or a different t-shirt. You know, I wouldn't mind wearing my other stuff, but no, I am committed to doing this.
Yeah, we need a holiday. Like some of us have been doing this. I mean, I've been speaking out publicly about this since 2017. And to me, that's like, oh, that's not that long, but that is a long time. And I'm tired, you know. We would like a break, but I know that I can't go to sleep at night without knowing that I'm fighting to win our rights back and to win child safeguarding back for my children and their children. And until I'm sure that we are winning, which I know we ultimately will, I just can't rest, you know, and I don't know how anyone else can.
Feel it. Things are changing.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's all good. Well, thank you again, Louise. I will see you during the week. And yeah, I've got a few interesting guests lined up. So we'll have to get a time in, and hopefully by then I'll have a new laptop because yeah, I'm coming to you on my phone. Yeah, but thank you everyone, and we'll catch you next time. Bye for now.